Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And happy to be doing this at all because many listeners may not know. I just finished an unexpected move, and so that's why there hasn't been any episode for the last 3 days. But we're trying to get back into the swing of things and hopefully get going back on our regular schedule. Alex sent me a note. She said she's going to try to hook in, even though she's been recovering from that surgery, but she's going to try to hook in a little bit. So it'll be great to have her back. But meanwhile, I do have a guest joining me today, and her name is Cote. And let me tell you, Kay went through something that no kid wants to go through. She was bullied when she was a young kid, and it really followed her for decades. And she's here to not only tell that story, but also to tell us how you break through and get back to being a happy, healthy human being once again. Because Kay, I mean, that's what you were at first, right? I mean, you for the first 2 years of your life, you were just this happy kid, right?
I really was, Walt. And thank you so much for having me today. I'm honored to be here and share this story because it's something I really hadn't opened up about. I kind of went through this, and from the ages of about 5 years old to 14, I was in a school system where I was chronically bullied on daily, usually. And I just didn't know how to handle that as a kid. So after I was out of that school system, I just kind of shoved it aside until I got into my adult life. And I realized, okay, I'm starting to see some patterns here in my behavior. Maybe this has something to do with it. So I did a deep dive, and I realized I wanted to get back to that vivacious little 5-year-old who has all the love in the world and just loves to dance and sing and play and gets along with just about anyone. So I'm kind of channeling back to her, getting in touch with my previous pre-bullied self.
Which is cool. I love that. That's great. But tell us what some of the symptoms were that led you to realize that you had an issue that had been carrying on all this time.
A few of the things I was dealing with were, just a lack of confidence. I didn't put myself out there, and I was scared to be who I am. And it's something I feel many people struggle with. Maybe they went through something similar or something completely different, but we start to take on the beliefs we're told as, if something happens like that. And I just noticed I was holding myself back. And I was not in the best of relationships sometimes. Overall, I think I'm a pretty happy, healthy individual, but I struggle a lot of times with those things, as well as a hypervigilance. If I meet someone and I just am myself, sometimes I over worry about what someone will think of me. And so I go into kind of a people-pleasing mindset. So I'm kind of working on I love to be caring and kind, but how can I remember those healthy boundaries and also allow myself to succeed and allow my gifts and talents to be at the forefront of my mind and to use them for good?
It makes total sense to me. I mean, especially if you've been through a trauma that lasted that long. I mean, that's a lot of years that you were experiencing that. So it's kind of deeply ingrained into your nervous system. I mean, it's built into your subconscious mind just because you had so many repetitions of it. So yeah, of course you're going to respond that way. I'm kind of surprised. I would be surprised if you didn't respond that way or something similar to that. But of course, the challenge at that point is how do you break free of it? And that's, I'm sure, the part that everybody else wants to know about too, because we're always interested in anything having to do with improving mindset around here. So, and I'm sure that played a role. So tell us how you broke through.
Well, Walt, this has been a journey, and it's an ongoing one. And I've always been really self-aware and really enjoyed emotional intelligence and psychology. So I started to listen to a lot of podcasts and followed people on social media who have a real voice in the space and are licensed professionals. And along with that, I started going through yoga teacher training, and I learned a lot about mindfulness. And so I've kind of merged the two together, and I call it mindfulness in action. So you find that sense of mindfulness, and then you take action say something like that negative bully voice, as I call it, that negative voice that rises up in me, I can recognize, I can greet that voice and say, okay, this is what this voice is telling me. But that doesn't mean that I have to listen to it. I can take an action and step beyond that and say, send an email that I was too scared to send, or like, it's a lot of little things and some big things, you know. So I've been kind of using those tactics, as well as just to take a step back and ask myself, is this my thought? Is it my own? Or is this something that is ingrained in me? And that's usually where I start. So that, paired with journaling, with talking to mentors and trusted people in my life, as well as just having that grace with myself to move forward and to know if that voice is telling me something, I can move past that. I can choose what to believe. And sometimes I can even lean in and say, what is this voice telling me that I don't know? So trying to befriend the inner bully as well.
Yeah, that especially that last bit. I've heard variations on that one. Another variation might be something like asking the voice, what is it that you need me to do? Or what is it that you're trying to teach me? Or something along that line. But yeah, that can be very effective. It's a little bit weird the first time you hear about it, but assuming that you're not in a meltdown mode, that can be really effective.
100%. And that's what's been kind of the joy about like learning this practice and practicing it more in my life, because ultimately I want to be able to use it better in those heightened stress phases as well, to know that I can pause, take a step back, and like a lot of times those feelings come up, whether it be just random things throughout the day that cause it, or a fight with someone that I care about, whatever it may be, where those thoughts really start to bubble up. And so that is kind of my next thing I want to tackle, is like, how can I use this in the fight or flight phase rather than just in like a calm state of mind?
Do you have any initial thoughts that you've developed at this point, or is it all kind of experimental?
Very experimental. I mean, a lot of times I try to tune into some breath work. I learned a really good breath work that is something that's helped me calm down from a fight or flight state or a sense of panic that sometimes arises. So that's been huge for me too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. It is a challenge because no matter what kind of traumas we go through in life, those traumas can manifest in a variety of different ways in our bodies, in our experience, in our behaviors, and so forth. And they can be recurring, and they can be challengingly recurring. And it's always helpful to get input and ideas from other people. How do you do that? How do you handle when you're in that kind of a situation? So that's why we love hearing your story and about how, you know, what you've discovered along the way. Like, give us the tips and tricks.
Oh, I love sharing tips and tricks. So if I'm in a situation that arises, I tend to, and I'm not perfect at this, I struggle. A lot of times it's after the fact that I take the dialogue or the situation that happened and I analyze it and I think of things I could say better the next time. So it's a lot of just like kind of looking at my life as something's going on and taking myself out of the equation and looking from a bird's eye view down at the situation and viewing it from a place of almost objectifying it to a place of, okay, what's going on here? And taking my emotions out of it, knowing that the emotions are there, but just looking from a bird's eye view at the situation and looking what both parties have to say. And so that kind of allows me to, I would say, formulate a better response for the next time around.
And our friend Alex, the resilient, it says on the screen, the resilient Alex Gandy is back and joining us. How are you feeling, Alex?
I'm doing better day by day.
And by the way, Kay, she will always give an answer like that. It doesn't matter what she's dealing with, doesn't matter what she's going through. I guarantee it's going to be something just as happy and positive as that.
I love it.
I'll try to corner her later, like, how are you really doing? But
Hi, Alex. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And we were just getting sort of a little workshop, I guess you could call it, from Kay about how you go about dealing with mental traumas that stick with you and stay with you. She was bullied as a child, and it really, carried with her for quite some time. And she's been sharing some of her favorite things. And one of the things you mentioned, Kay, was journaling, which I want to mention because I had a lot of resistance to journaling. I mean, a lot of resistance. You too, Alex? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then I went through a couple of things, including recently I went through a out of the blue divorce, and I'm still kind of going through that. And as much as I hate it, I have to admit it works. It's really kind of pissing me off.
It's usually the simple things like the journaling, the walks, the yoga, the things that we all just say, we'll do another day. Those are the things that work, I found.
Yeah, I agree with that. Walks are my favorite thing too. I love those. But the journaling, my hand would cramp up. I'd be in instant pain in 30 seconds and like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But it would always work. Yeah, it's been tough. Alex, I haven't asked you in a while. What you're dealing with a lot of stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have any favorite techniques you're using that are working for you?
Ironically, I did just start journaling like 2 weeks ago.
Did you really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, like you, I had resistance to it because I'm like, I don't want. I feel like if no one's gonna read it, it's weird. Oh, hold on, I froze. How did I freeze?
Oh, we'll bring you back in. Well, you're in audio right now. We can hear you.
That unplugged. Hold on.
Okay. Well, while Alex is reconnecting, we'll ask one more thing and then we'll get her response on that. But Kay, when you've been teaching other people, what kinds of responses do you get in terms of what do people react well to when you're sharing ideas with them?
They really enjoy the simplicity. Like they're like, wow, it's so simple. It's that simple. Because my personality type is one that does like to simplify things because I know life is complicated and we can get overwhelmed with all the things. And so it's simple tactics done right, done regularly, consistently. And that really is what I found to be the best methodology. And like, that's been resonating with people I share with. They're like, you make it seem so simple. Simple and easy are very different words. Simple is a simplified so our brains can actually absorb the information and say, I can do this. I can get through this. Easy is totally when you indulge in something else and completely avoid a situation. And so
interesting definition. I like that.
I know because I do it. I know when I do it. I do both because I naturally do like to stray away from something challenging, hard, but just through repetition, and it's kind of an exposure therapy somewhat too. It's just you become more confident the more you keep going, and the more confident you gain, the more the momentum grows.
I'm also interested in something else that you described. You described how, I can't remember what the exact wording was, but described how you would get into the fight or flight mode very easily, and you always have your defenses up and so forth. And I kind of get the impression from what you described about yourself as a young girl that you were never really introverted, but what you're describing is what it's like to be introverted. I don't know if you knew that, but that's what introversion feels like.
That is so interesting. Am I getting some echo? I feel like I'm getting some echo.
Oh, we're getting a little echo. We're looping through you, Alex. Do you have earbuds or headphones?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay. I'm going to mute you while you're doing that.
And could you
try to mute you? Maybe it's not going to let me. Oh, there we go. Now she's muted. Try again, Kay.
Could you ask the question again?
Let's see. What was the question?
I think it was, we were talking about personalities as a kid. Introversion. Yeah.
Introversion. Yeah, right.
Yes. I think I am more of an amnivert. So I'm sort of I am an extroverted person, but I'm very, like, I analyze the situation before I walk into it. I'm very particular who I'm extroverted with. And so it's kind of like an extrovert by choice. I'm naturally charismatic and extroverted. I can make friends with a tree, people tell me. So I'm pretty friendly and I will listen to anybody and hear them out. But when it comes to like who I share on that deeper level with. I like to be surrounded by growth mindedness and you know, people who have a really good heart. I think heart is a really big importance for me, and because that's how I also share love, is like I have a big heart for people. So I've learned to tap into both sides of my introverted and extroverted self. There's been times where I've been extremely introverted in just different situations in my life. Being bullied, I felt like that extroverted kind of creative, vivacious side of myself was very stifled. And so I did become more introverted. But it's funny because I can kind of sway both ways, but I would say I'm more extroverted now at this time in my life.
Well, that's actually a good thing, being able to go both directions. I mean, because I'm an introvert who learned how to become extroverted. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you were describing, I went through, I just came from the other direction. But it basically amounts to the same kind of thing. I'm selective, you know, I'm only close to certain people, and they got to have certain characteristics and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when you were describing the pulling back part, my God, that's exactly what it feels like to be an introvert. You're pulling back from everything constantly all the time. And it's something that you have to kind of unlearn. I had one person propose to me the idea that introversion itself is learned, and there might be something to that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I think so.
Theory. Yeah.
What do you think, Alex?
I said, I think so.
You think
just
so?
Like,
you think it's learned?
Just like anything else is learned, you learn how to be an extrovert. So somehow you learn how to be an introvert too.
Could be. It could be. I don't know. Haven't figured that one out. Anyway, you were describing to us your favorite tools, Alex, before the audio started getting kind of crazy. So
yeah, weird. Yeah, but like I was saying, I did start journaling about 2 weeks ago, and I do feel better. And it's more of a guided journal, so it charts down like what were your goals for the day, what did you accomplish, and what would you change about the day. So I like that better than just free writing.
Okay.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a guided journal too, actually, right now, and it really does prompt me. And it's wild how when I open it up, what it's telling me is actually mm-hmm. very accurate to what I'm going through most of the time. Mm-hmm. And it's almost a little like, but yeah, that's super helpful to have some prompts sometimes mm-hmm. because it can be hard to like know where to start.
Right, right.
I'm curious about that phrase, what the journal is trying to tell you. Because, I mean, I've never had that experience. I mean, for me, I sit down and I just write about whatever's going on, and that's about as far as I don't have a journal that talks to me. I mean, maybe other people can do that. I haven't figured that part out, you know, so I'm curious about
that. I've done both too. I've had I do free writing and now I journal, and I honestly too, to kind of bring it back to podcasting even, my podcast is a form of journaling for me because of just the nature of what I talk about on the show is very much aligned with those thoughts and feelings that I do a lot of my journaling, I would say, through my podcast. Sounds
That's
weird.
A great point. I've been doing a podcast for 10 years and I never thought of that. That's really
You've
cool.
been journaling this whole time and you didn't even want to.
Well, this kind I like because my hand won't cramp up with this one. You know, so that's
right.
good. I like that. Yeah.
Except when technology goes off the fritz and your brain cramps up.
That doesn't hurt my hand. It's okay.
It hurts your brain, though.
Well, again, yeah. Actually, even with that, though, I've gotten to the point where, okay, yep.
Yeah.
Some sort of technological ghost has gotten in here again. Hello. How
you
doing?
It's the gnomes.
There is something. I experienced something the other day, too, where I swear it was funny because I feel very much in tune, like what I'm working on right now is very much my own path. And then of course the system on my work computer froze and I couldn't even log in. And I was like, okay, universe is telling me you got to finish your podcast episode. So that's exactly what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more about the podcast. What's the name of it again?
Yes. So the podcast is called Elevated You Podcast, and I just launched it in January. However, I've been podcasting for 3 years, kind of circling around the same health, wellness, motivation kind of wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until this January when I was at this crossroads where I was in the middle of rebranding and I said, there's a missing link. I need to figure it out. And that's exactly when it hit me. I literally went online, was scrolling through Instagram, and I read something from the holistic psychologist, and she posted about hypervigilance and bullying. And that was like an aha moment. And the second I saw that, I posted it and I shared. I said, this totally makes sense for me. I went through 9 years of bullying. And it was after that, one of my old classmates who, she didn't bully me, but she was my friend more, but she didn't, like, she was apologized in her message back to me and said, I wish I would have stuck up for you all those years. And that validated my feelings, because I always thought, oh, I'm just being a wimp. I should just be able to take this. This isn't affecting my life. And for someone to reach out and say that, I knew right in my soul, I was like, this is what I need to podcast about. Like, this needs to be the premise. Like, this needs to be the underlying, my why behind why I podcast. And since then, I kid you not, it's been revolutionary. I just gave a speech in Orlando about it, like at a podcasters expo called Podfest. It's like, and this literally happened middle of January. And since then, it's like everything is unfolding the way it should. It's been like kind of a miracle.
That's really great. Yeah. You basically opened up some energy waves there, and stuff's flowing as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. I'm still thinking about what you said about podcasting being a form of journaling. I mean, it's just like circling in my head right now.
I love that. And it's so true. Like, It really is, because it's we're verbal processors. So by verbally saying what's on our minds, we can process it out, and we can make sense of things that we're going through. And then especially if you have a dialogue, if you have someone else that you're talking to, that's when these little aha moments come up. It's like, why didn't I think of that? Well, that's why these conversations happen, because then, two heads are better than one. So you can kind of work through different things together. So
yeah, different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the word I was thinking of too. I use that word a lot because I love the perspectives of all the different people who've been here on the show. And I've learned so much from them. And you're right, that it's kind of an enhanced form. It's I don't know, journaling on steroids or something, because it's not just you saying stuff or writing stuff. You're also getting input from others. And in that input, you're getting ideas, you're giving them ideas, and there's like a synergy that builds. That synergy goes way beyond what we can do individually. So it's like, it's super powerful journaling.
It really is.
Right.
Yeah. So how many episodes have you done in the past year?
I actually have just launched episode 105.
Whoa!
So,
congratulations.
Thank you. It's been, when I hit 100, wow, it just woke me up. I was like, wow, you've been doing this for 3 years now. It was a fluke thing when I got started. It happened during the pandemic, and I love to share this story. I was offered a live radio show for funsies. And I'd always had kind of a background in acting and presenting and things like that. So I thought, oh, this will be fun to try. Went in, learned all the board. I learned how to run and do production. And then I just, after, when the pandemic hit, I started to produce from home and send my content in. And I started doing like these interviews, and I realized, I was like, why don't I just like go out on my own and do this as a podcast? And that's when it happened. And I launched my first podcast called The Wow Factor. And since then, I've been pretty consistent. I've taken a few breaks between, but I would say I'm pretty consistent about it. And yeah, that's kind of how it started.
That's interesting, because when I started my podcast, it wasn't regular radio. It was online radio. It was an online station that still gets feed on our episodes, called PRN. And same kind of thing. They contacted me. I started a different kind of show at that point. And after a couple of years, it was news and politics related. And it got really depressing. I said, I don't want to keep doing this. Can I do this law of attraction thing? I know it's woo-woo and so forth. And they said, yeah, sure. That'd be great. Oh, good. I like that. So that's how I switched it over. But same kind of thing. Yeah. Starting with a radio type environment and then moving over to podcasting. And I don't know what your reason is. My reason was first because I needed to learn stuff, and I needed to learn from experts. And then it's just because it was fun. I mean, after the first few hundred episodes, I figured I'd got the LOA part down, but I wanted to keep going, because it's like it's a drug that you don't have to pay for.
100%. It's so much fun. I love podcasting and I love the conversations I've had. I learn from every guest. That's why I do it. It's kind of a selfish endeavor sometimes.
It is. There's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah. And we share it, we share the knowledge forward. And it's been so much fun. Like honestly when I get someone that reaches out to me, like say on Instagram in a DM and says, wow, this episode really changed my life. Wow. It's like, you're my friend in my corner who's just helping me. And I just think this has an impact. And like, I get really emotional about it in a good way, because it's like, wow, this is so much bigger than anything that I'm thinking about. It's like, if this is touching people's lives and encouraging them to go for their goals and elevate their mind, their well-being, and elevate themselves to their true purpose. If I can help one person like that, that's exactly what I want to do. I love it.
Did you have the experience that I had when I first realized that people were listening? And I thought, oh my God, I have listeners.
A little bit. It's a little daunting because you're like, I better give some good advice.
Right,
if
exactly.
I have an off day.
You got a responsibility at that point, right?
100% to be a voice. Yes. But it just feels like, it feels so right. Like, I feel like this is the path I'm meant to be on, at least at this time in my life, that, and it's a medium that's so fun and people are really latching on to this podcasting medium. So yeah, it's been good.
All right. So let's tie this back to, your experience that got the whole thing started, because you were bullied for 9 years in school. And we led this through to podcasting and decided that's a rather interesting and powerful form of journaling. So what have you learned from the podcasting that you've been able to apply to help yourself get better regarding the bullying that occurred?
For me, the number one thing the podcast has done is create a community, and it's inclusive. And that's the beautiful thing. Anybody can listen to it. It's out there for anyone for the taking, whoever wants it. And that's the beautiful thing. There's no exclusions. And when you're bullied, you feel very excluded. You feel very alone. And the podcast allows me to connect with not only my guests, but my listeners, because I feel like it's something that can be used as a form of, if someone's having a bad day, they can turn a podcast on. I've turned podcasts on that I love when I'm having a day where I'm feeling down in the dumps, whatever it is. I turn a podcast on because it's like you're in the room with the people on the microphones, and I catch myself responding, and it's transformative. And it's like by the end of the episode, I feel like I've got a new stride. I've got a new going about my day with a new attitude. And if I can be that for others and help them feel included and help them feel motivated, then that's been my biggest takeaway, honestly. And that's how I've kind of used it to come back to the bullying thing. It's like, you've always got a friend on the other side of that podcast. And I try to respond to my DMs, and I just want people to know that they can be heard, and that their voice matters, and that everyone wants to be loved and accepted.
Right.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, the other thing that I've also learned is that when you do it long enough, you develop a lot of contacts. I do both co-host and guests. As you can tell, Alex is a co-host. And when I first started going through the divorce that I'm going through, it was a complete shock to me. And it was my friends through LOA Today who helped me get through it. People who have been co-hosting with me, people like Alex. And wow, I mean, 30 years ago, if you had told me that my best friends were going to be online doing a show with me, I would have said, yeah, okay, right. But they are, and it's wonderful. And I think part of it is because we're talking about stuff that we all have an interest in, and that creates a bond. I mean, it's a bond of shared interest, and then it leads to a more personal bond with each of the different people. So yeah, to me, that's one of the biggest parts. That's just huge. So I was listening to what you said about when you get that email, and I love those emails too, when you get a listener who you really resonated with. I imagine you probably have gotten emails from people who've mentioned that, they got bullied. And I'm wondering, was there anything in particular that they picked up on that you shared that really just, made a difference for them?
That's been the beautiful thing about this is, I just launched this, and within a week I had people telling me about their kids going through it right now. What can I do? And that really made me think. I was like, what did I do? And I remember thinking, like, when I was young, I was very creative. And so I would come home and I would sing and I would draw and I would write. And ironically, the first thing I ever did, I got on my old cassette tape recorder and I called them my radio shows, and I would just talk into my little boombox. And I would tell the other kids who are being bullied. There was no real listeners, but I was like talking to like I had an audience, and said, you don't have to listen to them. You can be you and you're going to be okay. And it's just, I had to like think back to that self. And I ended up telling this friend, I was like, if your kid is creative, allow them to find outlets that work for them, that like maybe they can get involved with a group of kids, extracurriculars that are creative, or find something that's outside of the school system or outside of the situation where they're being bullied, where they can find those friends. And so it's been just like kind of a one at a time. I've been trying to find the right things to say to help everyone who's been asking about it. And I think as I get these questions into me, I'm learning along the way at how to respond. And then I'm just building up this beautiful kind of log of different things I can talk about, to share about, because it's pain points that people are having right now that I can share about, that I can find a guest that is an expert in that field and we can talk about that subject. So if that answers your question, it was a little long-winded, but it's very much like a case by case.
You're muted, Walt.
It probably works better if I actually take the mute button off, doesn't it? Yeah.
A little bit.
How that works. But what I was trying to say is that it's a really great idea you had about having them basically do their own show into a tape recorder, even though nobody else listens to it. Because, I don't know if you ever played it back for yourself. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. If you did, you basically just reinforced the power of what you were doing. It's the same kind of thing that, if people record, their affirmations and then play the affirmations back, they're hearing it in their own voice. And so they're reprogramming their neural pathways. I don't know if that's what you were intending to do, but that's powerful. That's a really powerful process.
I was doing that at 5 years old. That was my coping, because kindergarten hit and I was like, why am I not liked? Like, what did I do? And I would just come home and like my medium that I had was this old boombox with a double cassette player on it. And I just did it. I don't even know if I knew what I was really doing, because I must have known like what a radio show was, but I just sort of did it. And now it kind of gives me like the chills thinking this is what I do for a living now.
You were doing something very intuitive, I think. You just intuitively realized this is going to help. You didn't necessarily know how, but there was that inner voice saying, just do this. This is going to be good.
Very much. And it's like I just had to become my own best friend. And that's kind of how I go through life, is just, that I'm very intuitive and I'm very kind of emotionally aware. And that I think it just like, it just did it of the self-preservation, out of the experiences I was having. And just like, I didn't want any other kids to suffer like I was suffering. And I really wanted to talk to them. And I kind of used my imagination that they were on the other side. And now, we're all grown up, but we're still dealing with the same battles of day to day. So it's almost like I'm living that prophecy that I had as a child. And so it's beautiful. And it just hit me. It like just hit me now that this is what I'm doing.
That's fabulous. Alex has actually, we describe her as the woman who's the queen of personal boundaries. So she's really strong on, not letting other people give her crap. But I'm curious, Alex, were you ever bullied? Have you ever experienced bullying?
I don't think so. There was this one girl, we're friends now, but she used to, she didn't like me because I was friends with her best friend. So that's what that was. So that was the only incident I had. She used to pretend there were mosquitoes on my back and slap me all the time.
Oh,
she's such a dick. Anyway. But that was the only instance of bullying I ever had, I think. Unless there's something I'm blocking out or that I don't recognize as bullying. But yeah.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that it wouldn't surprise me if there wasn't anything else because you don't take crap from anybody.
Nah, not once, not never.
No.
I got to learn from you because I'm a people pleaser by nature. So I've been working on that one. That's been a big one. So I'm working on new boundaries and like speaking my mind more because it's just, it gets too heavy by dealing with.
It does. It does. You just got to, it's like Dare used to say, just say no. And it's okay to say no if it doesn't suit you. And then ask yourself why. Why are you doing this for this person? Why are you letting this person sway you either way or whatever is bothering you? Why? And once you figure out why, then you can say no.
I love that. I like it. It's a very simple tactic. And we were talking earlier, simple tactics are so much more digestible than anything. So I love that.
Right. And it also makes sense too, because one thing that we do know is that no matter what the behavior is, no matter how much it may be harming us, there's a payoff. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. And that's really what that question asks. It asks, okay, what's the payoff for you to basically self-abuse this way by giving this power to this other person?
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's a payoff in there somewhere. And of course, we're trying to avoid finding it.
Right? Or we wouldn't do it.
Or we wouldn't do it. Yeah. This introspection stuff is really something. And I say that as, like I said, I was originally an introvert, and introverts are always introspective. But even when you have that tendency, it doesn't mean that you do it healthily. You can be introspective in an unhealthy way.
Example.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Well, taking the example of somebody who is your friend who is giving you a hard time because of, like what we said, somebody you were friends with somebody else and they were their best friend or something like that.
Yeah.
So some kind of thing like that. An unhealthy way to be introspective about that would be to justify why that person was snubbing you. Well, they do have the right to have their own personal friend, and I kind of am imposing on them because that, that was their best friend. I should have asked first. That kind of introspection, that's damaging.
The self-sabotage of it all.
The self-sabotage, right. So it can go either way. You have to actually choose to be healthy about it.
Truth.
You have to make healthy choices. And that's probably the hardest part if you don't have a role model or some kind of modeling system to draw upon.
Yeah. I
mean, I recall a conversation I had with a psychotherapist one time who pointed out that she had she had parents who gave her no model of how a marriage worked. And if, so she would try to create a marriage and it wouldn't work. Or even a relationship, just, a basic relationship. And she couldn't understand why it didn't work. Why? Because she didn't know how the inner workings worked. She just, did the surface.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I could see that in my own life too with my upbringing. Yeah. That's deep. I dig it.
We rely on those models.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And then if we don't know what's broken, we only know what we know. And if we don't know how to unlearn it, it's like we just keep going with those bad practices and life choices. And yeah, definitely see some of those aspects in my life too. So with the personal side of things like that.
I'm also mindful of how we can become dependent upon those models. And I had an example come into my life just in the last couple of days because, as you know, Kay, and I think Alex, you knew that I moved to a new home over the last few days.
No, I didn't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This came out of the blue, actually. Like 8 days ago, I found out I had to move.
Oh, wow.
So it was one of those really super fast moves. But I pulled it off. I'm in a new place. It's boxes all over the place. That's why I'm not using my usual setup. You don't see my Starry Night screen and all that. I'm doing a handheld mic because I don't have everything set up. But it's working. We're sitting here in the new home. But one of the movers who moved me, his mom passed in the past 5 days.
Oh.
Past week at this point. And as he was telling me that, I'm giving him sympathy and, understanding where he's coming from. He tells me he didn't have a father. He has no idea who his father was. He has no siblings. He has no other family. He just lost his entire family with his mom dying.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow. Well, first of all, I'm giving him as much support as I can reasonably do as a customer. I'm a customer of his. I can't really,
right.
It's a business relationship. I can't really do much there. And I certainly am not in a place where I should impose myself. But I'm thinking about, wow, what happens when your basic model gets cut out from underneath you?
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, you still have whatever you learned from that model, but now it's like your life's been turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is something I know something about, having gone through this divorce. But when your life is turned upside down, it literally feels like your life just got pulled out from underneath your feet.
Yep.
Like, where did my life go? It was here a moment ago. I know I just saw it.
Very true.
It's very disorienting. And that's when you realize and acknowledge, first of all, how valuable the model was. It's also when you realize how important your connections are to other people that you're close to. And it's also when you realize on some level how much or how little self-esteem you have. Because I find those are the factors that help us get through the really tough times the most. I mean, if you were bullied, Kay, I imagine your self-esteem was fairly low, and I imagine you built it up over time.
It's a work in progress, yes. And there's certain things that trigger me to go back into that mindset still. And I do notice when those things happen. Ironically, the big stuff I've been relatively good with. I've went through some hefty things in my years that we could do like two more hour show to talk about, but, but then it's the little things when it's the quiet moments, the complacency, the moments where I get in my own head. Those are what get me the most. I don't know why that is, but that's where I struggle, is in those moments where where my brain starts to just kind of spiral. And so that's where I've been trying to work on just being calm, or being like, okay, Kayla, did you make that thought up about this person? They have no reason for like not getting an email back or something dumb. And it's like, oh, they don't like me. Oh, I said something dumb. Something like that starts to roll in my head. And then it's like, I get an email back. Sorry. Like I just forgot to hit the send button. And I'm like, okay. Then I'm like, now I can take what I learned in that experience and be like, the next time that happens, I can say, okay, what's the reality here? And just give people the chance to, I don't have to be that hyper vigilant. I could just be like, okay, it's probably something dumb. You didn't do anything to merit someone to not like you or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, that last step's the biggest one, really, because you were willing to recognize what it was and make a change based on it, or to remember it, or to store it away as data. That we often skip that, and we often skip recognizing, the gratitude for having acquired the information, or having experienced, a thank you or whatever it might be. We blow these things off because we're really tough on ourselves, and when you're tough on yourself, that's one of the things you do. You don't give yourself credit for good things that happen. So you gave yourself credit. That was pretty good.
One time a previous guest of mine said a great phrase that it still sticks with me. What we go through, we can grow through. And it's like every experience we have in life, good or bad, is either it can be a lesson or a blessing. It can be, we can take something from every aspect of our life, even the hardest, even the scariest. There's something you can learn through it and try again, or pivot, or maybe repair. There's so many things to do instead of going into a self-loathing mindset, or something where you're, like for me, that's what I do. I'll go self-loathing, like I'll blame myself. And it's like, okay, no, what are you experiencing? And what's going to be at the other side of this? Because there is an end to this. This isn't going to go forever. What's the end goal? How can I get through this? And how can I find the support when I need it? Those are kind of like my go-tos when I'm going through something that's really challenging me as a person.
There's also another aspect that comes to my mind, which is recognizing the power of the emotions that we experience as we go through these things. The last 4 months during this divorce process, I've really come to know that firsthand. And it kind of sneaks up on you at times, like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? I did that one 3 weeks ago. Why is that one back? But it does. It just pops in and just kind of takes over. And as a formerly well-trained male who learned how to completely repress the emotions and who has since learned how to let them out and run around and do their thing. It's even more of a contrast. It's even more of it's almost a trauma in itself. It's not really, because it's letting out traumatic energies and letting them out of your body. But it feels a little bit traumatic when you don't have years and years of doing that, even though you've been around the planet for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really noticing that. I was having a conversation with a friend about just an incident that happened a couple of days ago. And I was just blown away by how, yes, I'm really proud of myself that I have learned to let those emotions, to express them, to get them out and so forth. But it still feels really weird. And it still feels really uncomfortable. And I imagine myself, wow, there are so many people, women in particular, learn how to get it out. Men are more trained to keep it in. And I think, wow, you guys, I wonder if you realize just how weird it feels when you haven't been doing it for so many years. I mean, does it feel natural to you guys? I don't know. You tell me.
Which part? The crying?
Any kind of rough emotion. It can be crying. It can be anger. It can be frustration. It can be almost anything. But, when it's coming out, very often for me, it just feels, oh, it's that alien thing again. Because I used to repress it for so long, I used to think of it as an alien. And I haven't completely gotten rid of that. I get it out now, but I still have that old feeling. And I get the feeling you guys don't think of it that way.
I don't.
Yeah.
I do.
Do you really?
Do you?
I do. I sometimes struggle with emotions. Like I struggle letting them out because I felt very much like I have to keep them in, and just like different relationships in my life.
That up. Okay.
And so mine bubbles up. Sometimes my emotions bubble up as a panic attack, or it's like, or I'll get I'll get a psychosomatic pain source, or something that my body responds, or inflammation or something like that, where it is coming out because I'm not releasing it. And so that's something I'm actively working on through my yoga and through breath work, and just through, sometimes I have to allow myself to cry. So I put on certain types of television shows or something. I put on literally, American Idol, when they had hit the golden buzzer or whatever that is, the one where they hit the
America's
golden
Got
buzzer.
Talent.
Yeah, they hit the golden buzzer, and I watched those, the 10 of them, and I just am woo, they're just so happy.
I had a friend who came in second place one year. I said I had a friend who came in second place one year.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Went to a pretty awesome high school, not going to lie to you.
I wish I would have been there, honestly.
Right?
A lot of people have said that about Alexis High School, actually. Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah. Oh.
But I love that you're drawing on that. That's another example of having a process, really. I mean, it may not be a process written in a book, but you have a process of go to, your favorite, playbook, playlist of YouTube videos or something, and just play through them to get yourself into that better feeling space. I love that. Do you have other, I actually probably have to create another one, because now that I've moved, all of my lists got pulled off the wall, and I had to, I have to set up new lists. But I used to have a list up of, 15, 16 different items that I can do to just lift my vibe if I'm struggling with something or feeling down or whatever. Just because when you're not in a good space, when you're feeling depressed or angry or frustrated or whatever, you can't see very far. You're kind of in a limited space, and it's kind of hard to remember. So what do I do? I can't remember what I do. What is it that I do in order to feel better? Because I can't find that right now. So I have my list. I can look at the list. Sometimes I forget what the list is too. That doesn't help. But do you have a list of things that you do?
I do. The number one thing I do is I dance. I love it.
Ooh.
I just get up and I dance in my living room, put my earbuds in. I look like a crazy person, I'm sure, to my neighbors. But I love to dance, and it's actually served me so well. I think movement in general for me is my number one, especially if the anxiety bubbles up. To go for a walk actually helps release, because you have the eye movement. It goes back and forth, and that actually is a calming mechanism in our brains. It helps us calm down. There's a whole science behind that, but it is when you're out walking and you can see the sensories in your eyes actually are calm because they know what's going on around them. Because if we're staring at a screen that can really bring up a lot of anxiety. So that's usually when it happens. And so if I get up and just start moving around, get up, put on a really, really upbeat song, get my vibe up, that's my number one. My number one is that. My other number one, have a good conversation. Call my mom or a good friend, send a voice note to someone, or put on a podcast if I need to like fake a conversation, just like have to get my mind off something. So those are my few. And then of course, like, I mean, sometimes the power of prayer, just like getting the words out and just like getting them into the universe. And that's a big one too. So those are kind of my go-tos. I think all of them are energy releases. And then of course, breath work. That's when I go to if I'm having a serious like panic, heightened, just all of a sudden out of the blue, I get like panic. Or if I'm flying and you hear a little turbulence, I go into a breath work.
Alex, do you have a list of go-tos?
I'm also going to say dance. I like to turn on a little, I have specific playlists for specific moods. So if I want to hear some bangers, I have that list. If I want to hear some romance songs, I have that list. Depends on what mood I'm in. But, most of the time I like to cook while I'm listening to my bangers.
Oh.
Yeah. Cause that way I know I'm going to sit down with the TV and have a good meal. So it's like a whole thing I do all at once.
I love that. Okay. That's nice. That's
right?
A good routine. I like that.
Thank you.
I got to jump in too because I'm not so much of a boogie type dancer. I'm a social dancer, ballroom and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, and that for me is one of my favorite ways to release some light energy and get into that good mood. So yeah, I had to jump in on that too.
I love that. I've got a ballroom background too.
Do you?
Yes, I love it. I took it in college and then I've taken like little classes and things along in my adult life, and I absolutely love it. My favorite is Latin. I love salsa dancing, and salsa dancing.
Salsa is the one that threw me the most. I made a mistake with salsa, and the mistake was the teacher that I'm going through now. I hadn't been dancing in years. I used to dance back when I was in my 30s, and then I stopped during my marriage. And then with the marriage ending, I decided, okay, I'm going to go back into the social dancing again, because that was always a really great thing. I met new people and so forth. So I started taking some classes with a group called Hartford Ballroom, because I live near Hartford, Connecticut. And the classes have they have it sort of like in a step program. So for any given week, there are going to be 4 classes: a beginner level, sort of a beginner 2, intermediate, and advanced, for 4 different dance styles. And then they rotate through. So last month's beginner becomes the new beginner 2. Last month's beginner 2 becomes the intermediate, so on and so forth. And the first month that I jumped in, the third style was swing, which is the one I have down pat. So I figured, well, I can jump in on level 3 swing. On the same day, the fourth one was salsa, and I'd never done salsa. Well, I think I took one lesson one time. I said, oh geez, I don't know if I can do this. And I told the teacher, I'm not sure I can jump in on a level 4 salsa. And it's been I used to dance a lot, but it's been a lot of years. She says, well, try it if you like. And if it doesn't work out, I'll give you your money back, and no hard feelings. I said, well, all right. I don't want to ruin your class, because I could really screw things up here. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, because I was so far behind everybody else, and I'm desperately trying to catch up. I ended up having to take 2 privates with her just to catch myself up on the class. I can see where I would love it, because it's very similar to hustle. It's similar to swing. It's similar to a number of different styles where there's a lot of arm movement that makes it look a lot more complex than it really is. Mm-hmm. And so I can see how that would be fun, but I can't say I'm quite there with the salsa yet.
It's hard, especially for the guys, because of the leading. It's like, I could see, like, because like having to lead is so much. Like, I can pop in as a follow pretty easy if someone knows what they're doing with salsa, but leads have to know the moves more. And so I totally feel that. And yeah, but kudos for you for jumping into a level 4 salsa like that.
Right? Good for you, man. Couldn't be me.
I still basic.
I scraped my way through it, but I got through it.
That's all that matters. You got through it.
I got through it. I could probably do a salsa now, but ooh, yeah. And as for the leading part, what happens is, you know how this is when you're taking classes in any dance style, you start to develop a muscle memory for it. Mm-hmm. And that's really what you rely on. Well, when you're the leader in couples dancing, you do the same thing there. You develop I wouldn't call it a muscle memory. It's more like a movement memory. And so at first you're trying to think everything through. And of course, that's when everything screws up. But eventually it's kind of like when you have certain movements and steps that you're used to repeating over and over again. So as a follower, you just know, okay, I can feel that. So I'm going to go in this direction and do that. The same thing happens with the leading. You develop just sort of this intuitive flow because you've done, this to that, to that, to that many, many times. And if you do that often enough, then you find you can start mixing them up, and it's kind of fun to see, okay, what else how can I transition this to that and all that kind of thing. So I mean, I totally can get how it would be really easy, actually, once you've been doing it for a while, to lead in salsa, because I find swing is really easy to lead. I'm definitely one of the better leaders in swing. Some of the other dances that would have similar stuff, like nightclub two-step, or let's see, what are some of the others? There are a few others that have a number of different arm movements, and in all of them, you don't think it, just like you don't think steps. You have, it's almost like you have impulses. You're in the middle of this one. Oh, impulse to do that, impulse to do that, impulse to do that. Because there's no other time. There's no time to think about it. You're just going bang, bang, one measure after another, bang, 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 different move, different move, different move. So you have to go on impulses, but the impulses come through, and it's very much like muscle memory. Yeah.
They do, and it comes back. Like, it's so crazy because I was just in Orlando this past weekend and went out. And one thing I wanted to do was go salsa dancing in Florida. I was like, that's the one thing. I was at this conference. It was great. Like, I really want to go salsa dancing. And I went out and I was dancing with a gentleman from the group, and he did a move. And I was like, he knows salsa. Like, that from one move, I knew. I was like, okay, this guy knows. And I looked at him. I was like, you know how to salsa dance? And he's like, yeah, I do. And then we salsa, like, we were doing twists and turns all night. It was great.
Nice.
I had a blast. I absolutely loved it. And it's so fun when you find people who do know how to do a dance style, because it's like, it just makes it so much fun, because you can, especially like something that has some advanced twists and turns, because it's like, oh gosh, it just was like, talk about high energy. That was like one of the highlights of my trip, was being able to do that.
I get that. I get that totally. And Orlando, my brother's actually in Orlando. I'll have to ask him where the salsa hotspot is, but
it was the Blue Martini. That's where we went.
The Blue Martini. Okay.
It's in this cute little area. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. It was really cool.
That's great. That's wonderful. So, okay. So we all have dancing on our go-to list for processes to do when we're not feeling it. And, yeah. I'm looking at the clock. My God, we just went through 57, almost 58 minutes as usual.
I said the same thing in my head. I was like, I know I got here late, but
yeah,
what?
That was quick, right? That was really quick. All right. Well, before we wrap up, we got to get a couple things. First, we have to get a piece of information from you, Kate, because you have the podcast. We want people to be able to find the podcast. We also want people to be able to find you. I mean, how do they find you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's just kcote.com, KAYCOTE.com. You can find me there, as well as I'm on social media at the kcote, all one word, on Instagram. And I just started getting into the TikTok world. So come watch me fumble on TikTok. And, so those are my two places. And reach out, DM me, like, follow, enjoy the content. That's what it's for.
That's beautiful.
Nice.
I love that. And I also like to share with all of my guests, and this is definitely true for you, especially as a podcaster, because there are many people that you'll never meet and you'll never see who heard you on the podcast, or perhaps they read something that you wrote or something like that, and you touched their lives, you helped them. Some of them, they'll send you an email or an IM or something, but most of them you'll never hear from. And yet you're still helping them. You're still touching their lives. You're still being a benefit to them. And we don't get enough appreciation for that. So on their behalf, I want to thank you for what you've been doing with your podcast, and for what you're going to continue to do, because you're really doing a wonderful public service by doing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to just be here and be a part of this energy for this hour, and just like reach people and make friends. That's what it's all about. So yeah, I'd love it. If anybody wants to check it out, Elevated You podcast on all platforms. And I'd love to hear what you think. And I'd love if they send me DMs and give me ideas for topics you want to hear about. Let me know if you've been bullied or, anything. I am a total open book.
That's beautiful. And Alex, since you did come in later than you wanted to, we're going to give you the last word on this. So,
Oh no, fresh.
As you think about what we were talking about, what's the highlight? What's the thing that stood out for you from the whole conversation?
What's the one thing that stood out for me? Is that eventually everyone finds their way and everything does get better.
She's so pithy. I mean, she just condenses it down into like 8 words. That was pretty good.
You could write all my titles, please. That would be wonderful.
No problem.
I will pay you.
Oh, we love Alex. So anyway, continue healing, Alex. We want you to be here.
Thank you.
So, yep. Thank you we're glad you were able to join us and considering what you've been going through lately, it's really appreciated. And thank you, Kay, also for being on the show and for sharing your story. And wow, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing some great stuff.
Thank you so much, Alex and Walt. You guys have been wonderful to chat with, and excited to keep this relationship going.
Nice.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.